Shalom. I would not pay another tithe until I heard this message. I would listen to it in its entirety because what I am about to read, the Father revealed to me through study. And it's one thing to believe that we have the truth because somebody else told us, but it's something else entirely to read the contextual scripture in order to get a firm understanding of what something is. And I say this with grace because a lot of us mean well. We really want to serve the Father, but we've allowed somebody else to come in and instruct us and to lead us instead of really gaining the spiritual revelation ourselves. So, this is very important about tithes. We need to understand. So, what was the purpose of tithes? Tithes were created to teach us the muscle that we would need in order to submit our will. Most of us are governed by our money. We allow our money to talk, as they say. And what happens is when you submit your will to Yahweh, He knows you're His. And so the tithe was when it was introduced in the Levitical law in order to teach the people of Israel to fear Adonai. But that is not the first placement of tithes. The first time that we see tithes, and tithes, the word tithe is ma'aser, and it means the 10th. And we first see the 10th given in Bereshit 14, chapter 14. So you had these kings warring. In the middle of this war, Abraham's nephew is taken away. He's captured. So let's go ahead and listen to this time. The king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Adnah, the king of Zahoim, the king of Bela, that is Zoar, marched out and drew up their battle lines in the valley of Siddim against Kedolaremer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Eleazar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of tar pits, and when the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some of the men fell into them, and the rest fell into the hills. The 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food, and they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. A man who had escaped came and reported this to Avram, Ivri. Now Avram was near the great trees of Mamre, the Amorite, a brother of Eshcol and Aner, all of whom were allied with Avram. When Avram heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Avram divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Oba, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the women and the other people. After Avram returned from defeating Kedolamer and the kings allied with him, the king of Sodom came out to meet him in the valley of Shevat, that is, the king's valley. Then Melchizedek, who is Melchizedek? Listen, Melchizedek, king of Salem, or Shalem, which means peace, king of peace. Who's the king of peace? Brought out bread and wine. That sounds familiar. He was priest of Yahweh, the Most High. And he barach Avram, saying, Barach be Avram by Yahweh, the Most High, creator of Shamayim and Haaretz, heaven and earth. And praise be to Yahweh, Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand. Then Avram gave him 1/10 of everything. The king of Sodom said unto Avram, Give me the people and keep the goods for yourself. But Avram said to the king of Sodom, with raised hands, I have sworn an oath to Adonai Yahweh, Most High, creator of Shamayim and Haaretz, that I will accept nothing belonging to you, not even a thread or the strap of a sandal, so that you will never be able to say, I made Abraham rich. I will accept nothing but what my men have eaten and the share that belongs to the men who went with me to Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them have their share. So, what does Avram, who is later named the friend of God, He's called the friend of God, a friend of Yahuwah. What does this teach us? It matters who we get our money from, and it matters who we give our money to. So the order of Melchizedek is Yahusha. Yahusha HaMashiach. He is the bread. He is the wine. This is his body. This is his blood, right? So the order of Melchizedek, he is the righteous ruler. As a matter of fact, that's what Melchizedek means. It means righteous ruler, righteous king, the king of peace, the prince of peace. How are you the prince of peace if you have not achieved perfection? And none of us can. So the first tithe was given to the righteous ruler. Okay. I say this with love because I once was a stripper and I made the mistake, and I talk about this in my book, How to Be a Believer in a New Age World. Uh, I took my money because I felt convicted as I was starting to come into the faith, but I really wasn't there yet. I took that money that I earned and I tithed it, thinking that it would cleanse my money. But from this scripture that we're reading here, you don't accept money from ungodly places. So, Saddam, which is the place where Avram said, "No, I will not accept your any money unless you say that you can make me rich." It mattered because how you receive your money, you don't want that entity to be able to brag about how they made you rich, because all credit goes to Yahuwah. For it is Yahuwah who gives you favor. It is Yahuwah who gives you the winning of the battles. It is Yahuwah who sits you where you need to be sat. It is Yahweh. It is Adonai alone. And Avram knew that Sodom, as in the Sodom and Gomorrah Sodom, was wicked. In fact, Yahweh destroyed that city to the extent where if you look back at it, you turn to a pillar of salt. So I want to talk to people who are doing things right now and they're looking at their world and they're saying that my life, I receive money from places that I know Yahweh would not be pleased with. And it doesn't even have to be wicked. It could just be even your corporate position. Did Yahweh make you for that place? Are your gifts and talents to serve Him being served for something else? Because that is robbing Yahweh of your praise and your presence. He wants us, even if we are working in a corporate position, if that's where Yahweh has us, there's a difference between I'm doing this because it pays all my bills and I feel comfortable. That is not. Ask Him, fast and pray, and ask Him and say, Father, is where I'm at where you want me to be? And He will guide you out if it's not. Because it does matter how we get our money, and it matters to whom we give it to. Notice how Abraham did not give it to a wicked person or a crooked person. No, the first time a tenth is mentioned, it is given to Yahushua HaMashiach, who is one with Yahuwah. And how do we give our tenth to Yahweh? We have to ask Him. He will tell us. But this idea of giving a tithe to a human being, well, the only human beings who by law were allowed to receive a tithe were the Kohanim, were the Kohen, the priests. Those were the only people who were allowed to receive the tithe. And we'll see that. So there's going to be a timeline that is going to show us how tithes were treated. So we're going to look at before Yahushua came onto this earth. We're going to look at when Yahushua was on the earth physically. And then we're going to look at after He ascended. And we're going to look at how were tithes treated in all three segments of time. Okay? Now that we know that there is such thing as wicked money, there is such thing as giving it to the right entity, which is Yahweh, which is Yahusha. Now, let's look at the law. So, Vayikra 27 and 30, and all the tithe of the land, whether of the seed of the land or of the fruit of the tree, is Yahweh's. It is Kodesh unto Yahweh. Okay, so that's where the 10th is in the law. And we go on to Vayikra, Leviticus 27 and 32. And concerning the tithe of the herd or of the flock, even of whatsoever passeth under the rod, the 10th shall be Kodesh unto Yahweh. Okay, so it's saying that it will be Kodesh, it will be set apart unto Yahweh. And what is the seed of the land? What is the fruit of the tree? It is what is produced. So that which we do of our hands, it is supposed to be what is consecrated unto Yahweh. How many of us can say that the works of our hands, Yahweh would delight in? And that can be so hard because it's like we have to restructure our lives. But I want to encourage those who are seeking that journey. It is well worth it. Why? Because the life that you live when you're in Mitzrayim, when you're in Egypt, when you're in captivity, spiritual captivity, cannot be compared to the life when you're in Zion. When you're in Zion, every atom, every fiber, every breath, everything that makes you tick, all works together for His good. It is all utilized. It is not some fear factor of somebody else taking over where you are. No, he made you so intricately. If you look at your fingers, nobody else has your fingerprints. The gifts that he placed inside of you when you're submitted to his will all work together. And it fits. It's like, this is why I was born. This is the moment. It all makes sense. This is why I'm here. But when we're in the world system, there's fear, there's paranoia, there is a lack of fulfillment. That's why there's so many drugs out there to help numb you, to help deal with this feeling of not feeling adequate or dealing with, I don't know, not being worthy of where you are. It's just there's it's unbalanced. But see, there's no unbalance in Yahweh because he gives you peace. He is the King of peace, right? Now let's look in Bidimibar Numbers chapter 18. And behold, I have given the children of Levi all the tenth in Yisrael for an inheritance for their service which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. So the children of Levi, all the tenth is issued for an inheritance because they didn't get any other inheritance. Ask yourself, to those whom you tithe, have they rejected everything else? Do they only live off of your produce? Do they only live off of your meat? Because the Levim, who were the only human beings to be worthy of taking that sacrifice when they're burning it on the altar, okay, and they were able to take some for themselves. That was their inheritance. Yahweh gave of the people their survival. Those you tithe to, do they live that way? Do they burn your sin offering? Do you know somebody who burns your sin offering? You go to them and you say, okay, I committed this, this, and this, and they take and they kill. If they do, they are in error because they do not have Levitical blood in their veins. They err because how dare they? Yahushua HaMashiach is our sacrifice. He is our bread. He is our wine, right? So is there somebody who's standing instead of a Levitical priest in your life? Because they are supposed to submit. And then watch this. And then in Bidmibar 18 and 26, it says, thus speak unto the Leviim, the Levites, and say unto them, when ye take of the children of Yisrael the tithes which I have given you from them for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up an heave offering of it for Adonai, even a tenth part of the tithe. So is the person whom you're tithing to, taking that tithe, that heave offering, which correlates, by the way, to his calendar, to Yahweh's calendar. And are they taking a tenth of your tenth and offering it back up into Yahweh? See, the heave offering is going to be based off of the harvest. And so if somebody is telling you to give your tithe, then you need to stand up, you need to raise your hand, and you need to ask them, or you need to pull them to the side privately and ask them, are you also going to have us follow the feast days? Because the tithe is according to the days. Are we going to also honor Shabbat, the Sabbath day and day of rest? This is important because to take one scripture out of place or one commandment out of place and not honor all of it is not right. Bidmibar, Numbers 18 and 28. Thus ye also offer an heave offering unto Adonai of all your tithes which you receive of the children of Yashareel, and ye shall give thereof Adonai's heave offering to Aharon the priest. To Aharon the priest. And then it's like even his sons, like two of his sons sent up strange smoke, like, and they were killed. Who are these people who are standing in the stead and saying that, oh, yeah, I'm your priest? No, you are not, because there is such thing as blood. And those who are just saying, oh, yeah, because you need to give me tithes, like, we're going to look at some more scripture where that is out of order. So this is going to be scripture heavy. Devarim 12. These are the decrees and laws you must be careful to follow in the land that Yahweh of your ancestors has given you to possess as long as you live in the land. Destroy completely all the places on the high mountains, on the hills, and under every spreading tree where the nations you are dispossessing worship their gods. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, and burn their Asherah poles in the fire. Cut down the idols of their gods and wipe out their names from those places. You must not worship Adonai your Elohim in their way, but you are to seek the place Adonai your Elohim will choose from among all your tribes to put his name there for his dwelling. To that place you must go. There bring your burnt offerings and sacrifices, your tithes and special gifts, what you have vowed to give, and your freewill offerings, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks. There, in the presence of Adonai your Elohim, you and your families shall eat and shall rejoice in everything you have put to your hand, because Adonai your Elohim has baraked you. So we see here that the people of Israel had to cleanse the land of ungodliness and the idolatry. So, looking, if you're living in the United States or wherever you may live, look around you. Are there gods? Are there idols? Like, if you go into the nail shop as a woman, do you see the goddess of luck with the cat? It's a cat, usually with the paw like that. That's for the god of luck. And they'll leave food sacrificed there in front of it. Or you'll see them in certain food places where they've got these shrines dedicated to these foreign gods. According to the scripture, they did not do tithes until the land was cleansed of all of that. Now, in the time that we are with Yahusha, with obviously, and we have his Ruach HaKodesh, we are to be the light and the salt of the earth, and we're supposed to reflect that which he gave us to say. We're supposed to work in our gifts in order to minister to those who are lost. And many of us don't even know what our gifts are because we have not sought him. Instead, we've sought the flesh, and the flesh robs the creativity of our spirit. For example, a man who's addicted to pornography, the pornography is bad. There's this idea in New Age philosophy where men who are followers of it do no fapping, which means they do not masturbate, and they withhold from sex. And they refrain from it because they know that sexual energy is creative energy and they harness it in order to manifest. Well, if the world knows that, then we as believers know that our energy, how we spend our time and our resources matters. And so maybe you're not addicted to pornography, But maybe you're addicted to your job. Maybe you're addicted to your status in life. Maybe you're addicted to how your body looks, whatever it is. But when we subject those things to the Father and we tear down the idols in our hearts, then we can have the creative power to help inspire those around us to pursue the gods anymore. But our Elohim, our living Elohim, the one who cannot be smashed. We don't go to church where there's graven images. We don't do that. We don't bow down to those. We do not create an image of Yahweh or Yahusha and say, this is him, and we bow to it like that. We don't do that. He is greater than rock. He is greater than tree. He is greater than stone. So it was not until after the land was cleansed of all these things that that's when they took up this tithes. And the irony is that there's a lot of pastors, ministers, etc., that accept tithes. But the question is, what have you done to cleanse the land? What have you done uh, to eradicate these things? And that's still not proving that they're a Levite. In Devarim 12 and 11, it says, then there shall be a place where Yahweh, your Adonai, shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. Like, there will be a place. There's a proper place for this to happen. It's not just on any grove or any corner. No, there's a place where Yahweh designated the Leviim to collect tithes. Devarim 12 and 17, thou mayest not eat within thy gates the tithe of any corn, of thy wine, or of thy oil, or the firstlings of thy herds, or of thy flock, nor any of thy vows which thou vowest, nor thy freewill offering, or heave offering of thine land. There's a specific land where you were supposed to consume part of the tithe. So if the priest or this person is collecting this, right, what land are they in? So not only are the gods, we've got the money sort of system here in the United States, it's referencing other gods. You've got the pyramid on the back. You've got the all-seeing eye, which references the occult nature of society at present. I mean, this is an ancient thing, but it's definitely still prevalent, where you'll have the eye and the all-seeing eye. And what the all-seeing eye is referencing, it's usually this glass object about this big. And what you do, and you think about different sizes, just like a dream catcher, it's if it breaks, then it has saved you from an evil spirit. Like, we have not put away the false gods of the land, but we're accepting this money in the form of a tithe. That is out of order. That is out of order, and I say it with love. Because, like I said in the opening, I was mistaken. I was greatly mistaken, because we are taught to fear being cursed in our money. We are taught to fear doing things wrong because we don't want to be cursed, but we don't learn what the curse was. And in our ignorance, we curse ourselves. So we give our money, our tenth, but we don't have healing in our bodies. We're still using the handicap stall at church. We give our tenth, but we still battle the same afflictions year after year, day after day, month after month. But and church services, or we're listening online. We don't have any power. The demons are not leaving our children, but we don't know why. We don't know how we've come into covenant with them. And the number one way to come into covenant with something is to buy it. The number one way, we looked at this with Avram, there's a righteous way to receive money, and then there's an unrighteous way to receive money. There's a righteous way to give money, and there's an unrighteous way to give money. But the Levim, the Levites, are no longer. In fact, in the book of Revelation, you're going to see that they're going to try to reinstate the sacrifices, the animal sacrifices. And this is an attempted spit at Yahushua HaMashiach, because he is the ultimate sacrifice. He gave of his blood. He gave of his body. He gave of his ruach. Into you I command my spirit. He said, I have the authority to lay down my life and pick it back up. He is the ultimate sacrifice. And so when we try to say, oh, I am the Levitical priest, I am the Kohen, check my blood out. And oh, by the way, the people in Israel right now are not the true Ivri by blood standpoint. And we all know this. It's like we're saying that we still need a Kohenim. How could you? How could you still need a Kohen? In the temple, the veil was ripped from top to bottom. That was grieving. The Ruach was grieved. This is the same symbol of sign of mourning that someone does when something grievous happens in their spirit. When Tamar was raped by her stepbrother, she ripped her garment. When Dawood found out that Shaul and Jonathan was killed, he rent his garment. When something happens that grieves your soul, you rent it. And you know, the Ruach HaKodesh, when Yahushua HaMashiach died on the cross, the veil was torn from top to bottom. It is a grieving. It is a grieving. But when he rose, he gave us the comforter. He gave us the Ruach HaKodesh who brings us to all truth. Devarim 14 and 22. Thou shalt truly tithe all the increase of thy seed that the field bringeth forth year by year. Now, in a minute, we're going to find out what year by year means in relation to the calendar, the feast days. So Devarim 26:12 through 13 starts to show the heart of tithing. When thou hast made an end of tithing all the tithes of thine increase the third year, which is the year of tithing, who has been talking about tithing has been saying it's every Sunday, and has given it unto the Leviim. By the way, they are not Levites, the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, that they may eat within thy gates and be filled. Then thou shalt say before Adonai their Alua, I have brought away the hallowed things out of mine house, and I also have given them unto the Leviim, and unto the stranger, and to the fatherless, and to the widow, according to all thy commandments, which thou hast commanded me. I have not transgressed thy commandments, neither have I forgotten them. What is that? The hallowed thing, the Kodesh thing, the thing that is set apart. So when we give the set apart thing unto Yahweh, unto the Leviim, it was not just the Leviim. It was also the fatherless, the stranger, the widow, according to thy commandments. You know, it's interesting because we've got all these programs that are there to help women who have children, the fatherless children. But those programs really are designed to keep them dependent on it. The way that Yahweh had designed the land was that the people would care for those who were afflicted. It was never designed for us to need a system to step in instead. And the Levi'im were to have a heart for the people. You didn't glean all your fields, you left some crop there so that those who were passing through could get it. Ruth the Moab, who ends up having Obed by Boaz, she was one such foreigner. She was gleaming through his fields, and she was able to take from that, and she was able to feed Naomi. The reason that happened is because there has to be a heart for that. Why does that happen? Because the Ivri people were in Mitzrayim and they were the stranger. They were oppressed and they were enslaved. And the sting of Pharaoh's whip, the sting of Pharaoh's whip is what caused the people to cry out unto Adonai. And he had such an empathetic heart that is what literally led this. It's like you will not mistreat the stranger. But how many of us are able to hire the stranger at a lower rate because we can get away with it? All right, Second Chronicles chapter 31. After all this was over, all Yisrael who were there went out to the cities of Yehuda and smashed the standing stones, chopped down the sacred poles, and broke down the high places and altars throughout Yehuda, Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh, until they had destroyed them all. Then all the people of Yisrael returned to their own cities, each to his own possession. Hezekiah reestablished the divisions of the Kohanim and the Leviim according with the ways of the divisions that had been before, with each man assigned his task, both the Kohanim and the Leviim, for burnt offerings and for peace offerings to serve, to give thanks, and to praise at the gates of Adonai's camp. He determined a portion of the king's property to be given for the burnt offerings, that is, for the morning and evening burnt offering, and for the burnt offerings of the Shabbats, Rosh Chodesh, and the designated times as prescribed by the Torah of Adonai. He also ordered the people living in Jerusalem to contribute the portion meant for the Kohanim and Leviim, so that they would be submitting themselves to the Torah of Adonai. As soon as the order was issued, the people of Yisrael gave in abundance from the first fruits of the grain, wine, and olive oil, honey, and other agricultural produce. They brought the required tenth and more. The people of Yisrael and Yehuda, living in the cities of Yehuda, also brought the required tenth of oxen and sheep and the required tenth of consecrated gifts that had been dedicated to Adonai their Alua, and piled them in heaps. They began accumulating these heaps in the third month and completed them in the seventh month. See, specific times. When Hezekiah and the leaders came and saw the heaps, they barach Yahuwah and his people Yisrael. When Hezekiah asked the Kohanim and Leviim about the heaps, Adriahu, the Kohen, chief Kohen from the house of Tzadok, answered him, "Ever since the people began bringing offerings into the house of Yahweh, we have had enough to eat and plenty left over, for Adonai has blessed his people. Barach his people, and what is left over is this massive supply." Then Hezekiah ordered storerooms prepared in the house of Adonai. After preparing them, they faithfully brought in the offerings, the required tenth, the consecrated things. So that's where we're going to see later on where we get the storehouses from. That's where it originally, Malachi is quoting this, because what happens is if the priests, the Kohen, the Leviim, if they're not fed by the tithe, what happens is they get their food from elsewhere. And adultery happens because that's not the order. If Yahweh calls you to his table, it is his desire to feed you. If you eat at another table, you're committing adultery. That's why it is so scary and it's so counterintuitive to ask where we should work and how we should get our money. But it is the key to spiritual strength. It is the key to spiritual authority because it matters how we amass our wealth. When a wicked thing has founded us and our beliefs, there's turmoil. Now, Yahweh can use your enemies as your footstool, for sure. And there was plundering of many wicked cities, definitely. But do be clear that the battle was won because of Adonai and Yahweh's presence. It was not won because those places were conquered. All right, this is Nehemiah chapter 10, verses like 28 or 29, depending on the translation. The rest of the people, the Kohanim, the Leviim, the gatekeepers, the singers, the temple servants, and all who separated themselves from the peoples of the lands to the Torah of Yahweh, along with their wives, sons, and daughters, everyone capable of knowing and understanding, joined their kinsmen and their leaders in swearing an oath, accompanied by a curse. In a case of noncompliance, in the case of noncompliance with Torah is not a curse. But if you break covenant, it is as follows. This was the people of Yasharal saying this: we will live by Yahweh's Torah, given by Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, and will perform and obey all the mitzvot rulings and laws of Yahweh, of Adonai our Alua. We will not give our daughters as wives to the peoples of the land, or take their daughters as wives for our sons. How many of us marry out of his will? If the peoples of the lands bring merchandise or food to sell on Shabbat, we will not buy them from them on Shabbat or on a Kodesh day. How many of us violate Saturday, Shabbat, the Sabbath, and we buy and we sell and we support businesses that buy and sell on Shabbat? Shabbat means seventh. So Sunday is not Shabbat. We will forego planting and harvesting our fields during the seventh year and collecting debts then. When do we give the land time to rest? We are supposed to forego planting and harvesting in our fields. We're supposed to, the seventh year is supposed to be Jubilee. We will impose on ourselves a yearly tax of 1/3 of a shekel, 1/7 of an ounce of silver for the service of the house of Yahweh, for the showbread, for the regular grain offering, for the regular burnt offering, for the offerings on Shabbat on Rosh Chodesh, at the designated times, and at the other Chodesh times, for the sin offerings to make atonement for Yisrael, and for all the work connected with the house of Yahweh. We, the Kohanim, the Leviim, and the people will cast lots in connection with the wood offering, so that it will be brought to the house of Yahweh, our Eluah, according to our fathers' clans, at specified times, year by year, and then be burned on the altar of Adonai, our Eluah, prescribed in Torah. It goes on, but that specific time. So, ask these people who collect tithes: Are you a seed of Aharon by blood? Are you going to teach the congregation to honor the feast days? Are you going to do hard work to help rid the land of all these atrocious things that are attacking? Yeah, look, the rainbow, for example, that's not pride. That's not pride symbol. That's Yahweh's promise to his people that he will never flood the earth again. And it has been taken and it's been used and abused. A Leviim, a priest, would be going to that. There would be some knocking on some doors. He would not put that flag on the doorpost of the church. That's not, I won't even, almost for. Listen, you lowly cows of Bashan who live on Mount Shomron, who oppress the poor and grind down the needy, who say to their husbands, bring something to drink. Adonai Elohim has sworn by his Kodesh ways that your time is surely coming. You will be dragged away with hooks, the last of you with fish hooks. You will leave through breaks in the wall, each woman right behind the necks, and will be sent off to Harmonah, says Adonai. Come to Beth El and commit crimes to Gilgal and commit more crimes. Bring your sacrifices in the morning and your tithes after 3 days. Burn leavened bread as a thank offering. Brag in public about your voluntary offerings, because that's what you love to do. Yisrael, says Adonai Elohim. I made your teeth clean of food in all your cities, left you with nothing to eat in your villages. Still you haven't returned to me, says Adonai. I withheld the rain from you 3 months before the harvest. I made it rain on one city and not on another. One field and had rain while the other had no rain, dried up. From 2 or 3 cities, they would stagger to one city for water to drink, but there wasn't enough. Still, you haven't returned to me, says Adonai. This keeps going. You got to read this passage in Amos. But the main thing is, Yisrael was bragging, like, yeah, we're doing our tithes. We're doing them. But Adonai was like, I have starved you of food. I have starved you of what you desire. I have made it hard for you to even get water. And still you will not return. So the will and tithe are not congruent. Just because one pays tithe does not mean that the will has been sacrificed. I could earn money through a wicked way without Yahweh's presence, without his placement. I could pay tithe out of that and still be in error with my money, with my resources. Malachi chapter 3. Look, I am sending my messenger to clear the way before me, and Adonai, your Eluah, whom you seek, will suddenly come to the temple. Yes, the messenger of the covenant, in whom you take such delight. Look, here he comes, says Adonai Tzavot. But who can endure the day when he comes? Who can stand when he appears? For he will be like a refiner's fire, like the soap maker's lye. Like those of us who have had relaxers, lye is what makes it burn. He will sit testing and purifying the silver. He will purify the sons of Levi, refining them like gold and silver, so that they can bring offerings to Adonai uprightly. So the Levim, whom he consecrated and said, these will be the ones to do the sacrifices. They must be upright in order to do them. Then the offering of Yehuda and Yerushalayim will be pleasing unto Adonai, as it was in the days of old, as in the years gone by. Then I will approach you for judgment. Then I will be quick to witness against sorcerers. against adulterers, against perjurers, against those who take advantage of wage earners, widows, and orphans, against those who rob the foreigner of his rights and don't fear me, says Adonai Tzavot. So then the question becomes, against sorcerers, against adulterers and perjurers. But if the spirits of sorcery, the spirit of adultery, the spirit of deception, the spirit of those who take advantage of those who work hard, the spirit of those who take advantage of the widow and the orphan, if those spirits are prevalent in a land, what that says about the spiritual nature of that land is that spiritual land is apart from Yah. So you could pay your tithe, like it said, and still be apart from Yahuwah and still be out of order. And definitely, if you're paying to a person a tithe, that is out of order. I'm saying that with love because I definitely was doing it. It is out of order. It is out of order. And then we're seeing the fruit of that because there's no salvation. What he's saying throughout scripture is that our tithes don't save. So even when we had the Kohanim, even though we had the Levi'im, they did not save us because each moment, each day, each obedience is greater than sacrifice. Like we didn't have that connection with him. And even now that we have the gift of this Ruach HaKodesh, we still don't have the pursuit of him. We want to do our own fleshly thing, meaning we want to have the job we want to live wherever we want, we want to be friends with whomever we want to drive whatever we want to even wear clothes that are by different gods. Did you know that Nike is a god? Nike is a god. It is I think it's a Greek god or Roman, I can't remember. It's a god. And like Starbucks, to my chagrin, because I love coffee, good coffee. But Starbucks isn't that great, but it's okay. Starbucks, that is a god. That is a siren. But we support these businesses that do like ungodly things. But then we want the authority spiritually to do what we want to do, but we've already come into contract with these other entities which have no power. But we're just saying that, Yahweh, I don't sit at your table only. I will eat from all these other places. I will drink from these other places. But then he will tighten the reins on us. And then we'll be like, what's going on? But none of us think that it's because we're being disobedient, because we don't understand what obedience is. His Ruach HaKodesh brings us to all truths. He's the one who sits us down in a heart and clenches it and starts asking questions. And in those questions, we see we don't really know. And we have the opportunity to fill it in with what somebody else said, or we have the opportunity to go read the word and see what it says for itself. If we keep reading down to 6 in Malachi, it says, because I, Adonai, do not change. You sons of Yaakov, you will not be destroyed. Since the days of your forefathers, you have turned from my laws and have not kept them. Return to me, and I will return to you, says Adonai Tzavot. But you ask, in respect to what are we supposed to return? Can a person rob God? Yet you rob me. But you ask, how have we robbed you? In tenths and voluntary contributions. So in tithes and offerings. A curse is on you and your whole nation because you robbed me. Bring the whole tenth into the storehouse so that there will be food in my house. And put me to the test as Adonai Tzavot. See if I won't open for you the floodgates of Shamayim and pour out a barakah far beyond your needs. For your sakes, I will forbid the devourer to destroy the field from your soil, and your vine will not lose its fruit before harvest time, says Adonai Tzavot. All nations will call you happy, for you will be a land of delight, says Adonai Tzavot. You have spoken strongly against me, said Adonai. Yet you say, how have we spoken against you? By saying there is no point in serving Elohim. What good is it to obey his orders? or to walk about as mourners before Adonai Sabaoth. We consider the arrogant happy, also evildoers prosper. They put Yahweh to the test, nevertheless they escape. Then those who feared Adonai spoke together, and Adonai listened and heard. Our record book was written in his presence for those who feared Adonai and had respect for his name. They will be mine, says Adonai Tzavot. On the day when I compose my own special treasure, I will spare them as a man spares his own son who serves him. Then once again, you will see the difference between the righteous and the wicked, between the person who serves Yahweh and the one who doesn't serve him. For the day is coming, burning like a furnace, when all the proud and evildoers will be stubble. The day that is coming will set them ablaze, as Adonai Tzavot, and leave them neither root nor branch. But you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness, will rise, and with healing in its wings. And you will break out leaping like calves released from the stall. You will trample the wicked. There will be ashes under the soles of your feet on the day when I take actions to Adonai Tzavot. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant, which I enjoined on him at Horeb, laws and rulings for all Yisrael. Look, I will send to you Eliyahu the prophet before the coming of the great and terrible day of Adonai. He will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. Others I will come and strike the land with complete destruction. Is Malachi. So when they say, bring your tithes and offerings into the storehouse so that your vats may be filled with plenty, the reason why the vats had to be filled with plenty is back to, I think it was Nehemiah that we just read. It was so that the priests could be fed and so that they would rule rightly and not starve while they were serving the temple of Adonai. It has nothing to do. The context matters. So now we are leaving the prophets and we're going into Mariahu 23:23. Woe to you, hypocritical Torah teachers and Prushim. You pay your tithes of mint, dill, and cumin, but you have neglected the weightier matters of the Torah: justice, mercy, trust. These are things you should have attended to without neglecting the others. So again, we're seeing Yahusha say, and because he's like, yeah, you're right. The Kohanim, the Leviim, they received that food, that meat. They ate a tenth, or they ate of the tenth of the people, but then they had more that they were supposed to offer back unto Yahweh. They're making their tithes. And Yahushua is saying, but you have neglected the weightier matters. What is a weightier matter? To trust in Adonai and do good, to dwell in the land where you're supposed to be dwelling, to keep the people on track. What point is it to have a priest make a sacrifice, but he does not trust Elohim with his ways and he's wicked? What point is that? What point is it if that priest goes and afflicts the people and makes them pay things they can't afford? So I ask in today's time, what point is it to be in ministry and to demand a tenth of which you are not even worthy of by blood or by position, and to make the people fear a curse that is not there, and to stand in between the people and their purpose while they come to your church day after day, year after year, week after week, hoping and praying that they can be delivered from their afflictions, hoping and praying that they will be saved in the last day, when really they're believing you in a way that they shouldn't, is keeping them from seeking Yah himself. There's like literally somebody who's coming in between the Most High. And that in between that I will accept on your behalf is why people do not have the healing that they're supposed to have. Why are there handicap stalls in churches? Why are we seeing abominable spiritual acts happening right now at an increased rate? Why are there so many gods out there where you get your nails done, where you go to food, when you do dollar bills? Why are they on your clothes? Why? In the cartoons, in the conditioning of the people. Harry Potter. Why? Why is there witchcraft? Why is there sorcery? It is because there are people who claim to be priests collecting a priest's salary when they are not priests. And they do it in air. I'm praying they're not doing it knowing the truth. My prayer is that they're doing it out of ignorance because they're following tradition. But tradition does not save, as we all know. We see in Luke 11:42 the reference scripture for that. And then in Luke 18:9-14, and Yahushua spoke this parable unto certain which trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. Two men went up into the temple to pray, the one a Pharisee and the other a publican. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, Yahweh, I thank thee that I am not as these other men are, extortioners, unjust adulterers, or even as the publican. I fast twice in the week. I give tithes of all I possess. And the publican, standing afar off, would not even lift so much as his eyes unto Shamayim, but smote upon his breast, saying, Yahweh, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For every one that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. I did not get this revelation about tithes until I said, Father, I don't understand. Why is my spirit, why is my ruach troubled about tithes? And in the admission that I did not know, that is when the Father revealed. He showed me, and we're about to go into this in a second, that the order Melchizedek, Yahushua HaMashiach, came to Avram, but he wasn't born of anybody. There is no record, and Paul confirms what I'm saying. There is no record of Melchizedek being born to father or mother. He is Yahushua. Came to Abraham. Came to Abraham in Bereshit in Genesis 14, I think in 20. Abraham gave a tenth of everything he had because he recognized he was Kodesh. But what did that man do? What did Yahusha do? He gave him bread and wine, the symbolisms, the spiritual symbolism of the body and the blood of Yahushua HaMashiach, his blood and his body. What person do you know of in today's time is worthy of that? As a matter of fact, Paul goes into this too. He says, the order of Melchizedek was not of Levitical blood. Yahushua HaMashiach is of the tribe of Judah. So if it really were to be that, even if you pop up and say, "Oh, I'm of the order of I'm a Kohanim, I'm of the Levitical tribe, I'm of Aharon's blood," still, Avram gave the first tithe to Yahusha. Let's go to that. So in Ivri chapter 7, this Melchizedek, king of Shalem, a Kohen of Yahweh, Ha-Elyon, met Abraham on his way back from the slaughter of the kings and barach him. Also, Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. Now, first of all, by translation of his name, he is king of righteousness. And then he is also king of Shalem, which means king of peace. There is no record of his father, mother, ancestry, birth, or death. Rather, like the son of Yah, he continues as a Kohen for all time. Just think how great he was. Even the patriarch, Abraham, gave him a tenth of the choicest spoils. Now the descendants of Yah, Levi, who became Kohanim, have a commandment in the Torah to take a tenth of the income of people, that is, from their own brothers, despite the fact that they too are descended from Abraham. But Melchizedek, even though he was not descended from Levi, took a tenth from Abraham. Also, he barach Abraham the man who received Yahweh's promise, and it is beyond dispute that the one who gives the beracha, has higher status than the one who receives the beracha. Moreover, in the case of the Kohanim, the tenth is received by the man who died, while in the case of Melchizedek, it is received by someone who is testified to still be alive. One might go even further and say that the Levi, who himself receives tenths, paid a tenth through Abraham, inasmuch as he was still in his ancestor Abraham's body when Melchizedek met him. Therefore, if it had been possible to reach the goal through the system of Kohanim derived from Levi, since connection and with it, the people were given the Torah, what need would there have been for another different kind of Kohen, the one spoken of as to be compared with Melchizedek, not to be compared with Aharon? For if the system of Kohanim is transformed, there must be a necessity occur a transformation of Torah. The one about whom these things are said belongs to another tribe, from which no one has ever served at the altar. The Melchizedek order, this is the kind of Kohen Hagadol that meets our need. Kodesh, without evil, without stain, set apart from sinners and raised higher than the Hashemayim. You don't have to worry about Yahushua HaMashiach missing the bar or cheating on his wife or some sort of exploit coming out about him. You're not going to see it. One who does not have the daily necessity, like the other Kohanim, Hagadol, the Kohanim had to make sacrifices, atonement for what they did wrong. Yahushua HaMashiach doesn't have to do that. Of offering of sacrifices first for their own sins, only then for those of the people, because he offered one sacrifice once and for all by offering up himself for the Torah, appoints him as Kohen Hagadol. Higdomlim, men who have weakness, but for the Torah appoints as Kohen Nim, Gedolim, those who have weaknesses, but the text which speaks about those swearing of the oath, a text written later than Torah, points a son who has been brought to the goal forever. The order of Melchizedek is so important to note here because Avram, he gave to it. And of Avram's seed, then we get Levi, then we get Aharon. That's like saying, my great grandfather, okay, I am much less than he because he came before me, right? That great grandfather gives a tithe to Yahushua HaMashiach. But Yahuwah said that my brother would be a priest and receive tithes himself. Wow, what an honor for a Kohanim, right? What an honor. But shoes impossible to fill because even the Kohanim had to give sacrifices, right? So Acts 4-5 talks about Kepha and Yochanan, John and Peter. They were walking to the temple. They saw a beggar there. Please, sirs, can you serve some change? Kepha looked at him and said, silver and gold have we none, but such as we give unto you, rise and walk. And the man stood up and he's rejoicing because he can walk again. All right. So we're going to pick up in chapter 4. Kepha and Yohanan were still speaking to the people because they were telling the people, hey, don't marvel at this. This is what's supposed to happen. It's because of the man that you crucified, Yahushua HaMashiach. He is now risen, and the Ruach HaKodesh is what brought him to life. So they're going to they're going to the temple to pay these tithes, to still do these sacrifices, to do all the stuff. And yet he's saying, Yahushua came and he rose again. You should not have this system still. Rise and walk. So while they're explaining, the captain in charge of the temple police and the Tzaddikim came upon them. They were very annoyed that they were teaching the people their doctrine of resurrection from the dead and offering Yeshua as proof. The temple police arrested them, and since it was already evening, they put them in custody overnight. However, many of those who heard the message trusted. The number of men alone was about 5,000. The next day, the people's rulers, elders, and Torah teachers assembled in Yerushalayim, along with Anan, the Kohen Hagadol, Caiapha, Yochanan, a different John, okay, Alexander, and the other men from the family of the Kohen Hagadol. They had the emissaries stand before them and ask, "By what power or in what name did you do this?" Then Kepha, filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, said unto them, "Rulers and elders of the people, if we are being examined today about a good deed done for a disabled person, if you want to know how he was restored to health, then let it be known unto you and all the people of Yisrael that it is in the name of Messiah, Yahushua HaMashiach of Nazareth, whom which you had executed on a stake as a criminal, but whom Yahweh has raised from the dead, that this man stands before you perfectly healed. This Yahusha is the stone rejected by you builders, which has become the cornerstone. There is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under Shemayim given to mankind by whom we can be saved." When they saw how bold Kepha and Yohanan were, even though they were untrained, arats, basically just common men, they were amazed. Also, they recognized them as having been with Yahusha. Moreover, since they could see the man had been healed standing right there beside them, there was nothing they could say to discredit the healing. So they told them to step away from the Sanhedrin while they discussed the matter privately. "What can we do with these men?" they asked each other. "Why, anyone in Jerusalem can see that a remarkable miracle has come through about them. We can't possibly deny that. But to prevent it from spreading any further among the people, let's warn them not to speak to anyone about this name." The irony is that the Kohanim are placed there so that those who are lame can walk, so that the blind can see. And what is happening now, what I'm discerning now in the spirit, is you've got people who are ignorantly standing in the stead of an antiquated Levitical system, the priests, okay? They're standing there. They are not of Aaron's blood. Okay, they are demanding a tenth, and their priority is how good they look. Their priority is how nice their words sound. Their priority is not praying over those who's sick or telling them to rise and walk. Their priority is not the healing of the people, but they make sure that they collect tithes every single Sunday. They do not honor Yahweh's feast days. They stand on the wrong side of things in terms of all the sin that is in the world at present. I could go on and on and on about all these things that are wrong. But these people are they, and even if they are speaking about it and they're saying that it's wrong, they are not consecrating the people. They are not teaching them. But really it's that they are accepting money under falsehood. If I were a man and I was a pastor and I had the realization of this, I would close my church. And I would reopen and I'd say, okay, I would open something different. I'd say, this is now a congregation. We are going to all study the scriptures together. We're going to read it line by line. We're all going to take turns to read it out loud until we all get it. And then those who are dealing with some sort of ailment, like they're addicted to something or they can't find their purpose or they don't have their gifts, we are going to do a deep dive as to who and what is stealing their creativity, who is stealing their identity, who at what name is it. We're going to call it out. We're going to find out, get to the root of what is inhibiting their spiritual production so that everybody's producing fruit. And there are no tithes and there is no offering. You would think that Kepha and Yohanan, since through the Ruach HaKodesh they healed a man, you would think that they collected tithes. Let's find out. So in verse 34, no one among them was poor, since those who owned lands or houses sold them and turned over their proceeds to the emissaries to distribute to each according to his need. Thus Yosef, whom the emissaries called Barnabas, which means the exhorter, a Levite, native of Cyprus, sold a field which belonged to him and brought the money to its emissaries. So people were giving of their own. They would give all of it, not some, not a tenth. They gave free so that nobody was poor. And oh, the disciples didn't tell them to do it. They did it on their own accord. Now, there were those who tried to deceive. Watch this. In chapter 5, verse 1, it says, "But there was a man named Hananiah who, with his wife Shapira, sold some property and, with his wife's knowledge, withheld some of the proceeds for himself, although he did bring the rest to the emissaries." Then Kepha said, "Why has the adversary so filled your heart that you lie to the Ruach HaKodesh and keep some back of the money you received for the land? Before you sold it, the property was yours. And after you sold it, the money was yours to do as you pleased. So what made you decide to do such a thing? You have lied not to human beings, but to Yahweh." On hearing these words, Hananiah fell down dead, and everyone who heard about it was terrified. The young men got up, wrapped his body in a shroud, and carried him out and buried him. Some 3 hours later, his wife came in, unaware of what had happened. Kepha challenged her. "Tell me, is it true that you sold the land for such and such a price?" She said, "Yes, that is what we paid for it." But Kepha came back at her. "Then why did you people plot to test the Ruach Adonai? Listen, the men who buried your husband are at the door. They will carry you out too." Instantly she collapsed at his feet and died. The young men entered, found her there, carried her out, and buried her beside her husband. As a result of this, great fear came over the whole community and indeed over everyone who heard about it. So if you made it this far, I can hear some of you saying, well, if what about a prophet's reward? Isn't there something like that? Mariahu 10:41-42 says, Yahusha says, "Anyone who receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a reward of a prophet. And anyone who receives a tzaddik or a righteous one because he is a tzaddik, he will receive a reward that is righteous. Indeed, if someone gives just a cup of cold water to one of these little ones because he is my talmid, yes, I tell you, he will certainly not lose his reward." Elisha in 2 Melachim 4, when he tells the woman, "Go out, collect jars from everybody," because she says she has nothing left, "shut the door behind you. You and your sons pour the oil into the jars until it runs out. Sell the jars." That's a prophet's reward. When the woman, her son dies, and Elisha lays on top of him once, twice, and the boy sneezes 7 times and he wakes up, that's a prophet's reward. If those who call in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach and they they seek him in spirit and in truth because they heard what Yahushua said and they did it, they put it to action, that's a prophet's reward of salvation. That's a prophet's reward. But these people who say, if you have a need, sow a seed. Okay. Say that to Yehezkel, who laid on his side for over a year to physically embody the turmoil that Israel was going to endure. Did he, at the end of the days, say, if you have a need, sow a seed? How about when he could not mourn his wife? He could not cry when she died. What about when he was told to do that? What about Hosea, who was told to marry a prostitute and to name his children all after the affliction of having been married to a whoring woman to show the symbolism of Yisrael committing adultery? Like, did he go out and say, if you have a need, get sow into this ministry, you'll get a double portion? That's not what happened. That's not what the scripture said. That's not a prophet's reward. Yahushua does say this to his disciples: "You have received without paying, so give without asking payment. Do not take money in your belts, no gold, no silver, no copper. And for the trip, don't pack or an extra shirt or shoes or a walking stick. A worker should be given what he needs. What does that mean? That means that as you're working in his purpose, he's going to provide for you, period. He will provide for you. He will cover you. But you have to make sure that you're in his will. And I think a lot of people are blocking themselves from his will and from hearing his voice because they're stepping into obedience and they're disobedience because they're trusting these other voices to guide them because they're afraid to do the work themselves and they just need to hear somebody in the physical to confirm what's right. But that voice, just like the kings of old, is fallible. And the biggest lie that I'm seeing right now is that we should be paying tithes. The priests sought to murder and imprison the ones who were healing. Think about that. What gifts are inside of you that are being jailed because you're relying on somebody else's voice to be Yahushua's? The disciples did not collect tithes, but they were healing. We do the work. We do the work, and Yah will pray. He will bring the increase. He will lay on somebody's heart. Here, I have sold my land. I'm giving it to you. I'm giving you the money. Because Yah, that's how Yah works. What is the point? Are tithes the point? Is it the point to be able to say, hey, I did it? Was for me, it was, I thought I was making atonement for the wrong I was committing. I was in error. But I thought tithes would put me back on the right track. But that does not do it. For all the aforementioned reasons. Are tithes the point? Is security apart from him the point? So some of us tithe because we're so afraid of not having. But the reason why Yahushua told the rich man, go and sell all that you own, come follow me, is because when you have walked away from all that which you esteemed as dear, and you have to trust him for everything, that's when you start to see your gifts. That's when you guys start to see your purpose. That's when you start to see how you can go tell somebody about his goodness. That's how you can realize, okay, for me, if I were to go evangelize, it's not going to probably work out the best. But if I am supposed to be in a place for deliverance and there are evil spirits there, I know how to deal with that. We all have different giftings, but it's in that pressing. It's in that wilderness. It's in the leaving of Egypt with all of its gods and all of its comforts and all of its dependability. Even though it was spiritual slavery, it is in that wilderness where he's going to show you how do you work spiritually. It's when he prunes you of these ideals that link us to religion instead of who he really is. Whatever's blocking your purpose is the enemy. That can be trauma, lack of identity, demonic presence. Be careful of identifying the physical as the affliction. So when we are going through something physically, we want to identify the issue as being that thing. Remember, a psychologist once said that I was cursed because I was black, but God made up for it because he made me kind of pretty. Even if she was right, my curse wasn't my blackness. There are no curses because they died with Yahushua HaMashiach. When he rose, they died. The ignorance, the ignorance is why I struggled. I struggled because I did not know. And then I struggled because I did not believe. And then I struggled because I did not understand. And then I struggled because of my desires. And then I struggled because I did not believe again. It's like an unlearning, learning, unlearning, learning, unlearning, learning. And then we got to look at what has us begging. Why aren't we seeing healing in our lives? Heal the land first, then see healing in the people. Heal the land with obedience. If you want to support this channel, see, because now I've got to really make sure that I'm saying the right words. If you want to support this channel, there are two ways to do it. One way is to free Pastor Wang Yi. He's been in prisons in China for teaching the full gospel. He refuses to bow the knee and bend to the Chinese Communist Party. He is taking a stand in China. He refuses to remove scripture and fill it with President Xi's rhetoric. He has a wife and a child. Please, please sign the petition so we can help bring awareness to Pastor Wang Yi. If you're interested, I have the book of my testimony called How to Be a Believer in a New Age World, and it is available on Spotify. I am the author that reads my own work, so it's available on Spotify, and it's also available on Barnes and Nobles and as an ebook and Amazon as an ebook and a hardback. I did not do a paperback because I feel like paper always gets messed up. So if you want like an ebook copy, I think that's the most cost effective. But I think that the audiobook is dope because I could have fun with that. I could have fun with it. All right, Shalom. Ava.